Our special guests for Murfreesboro Storytellers talking about transportation projects are Paul Deggs, Deputy Commissioner and Chief Engineer for the Tennessee Department of Transportation, and Dana Richardson, Transportation Director for the City of Murfreesboro. We'll talk about the bridge at Broad and Memorial and other important projects for Murfreesboro and Rutherford County. Welcome to Murfreesboro Storytellers. Our program this month is originating from the City Plaza at the Murfreesboro City Hall. Our original plans were to do the program at the intersection of Broad and Memorial, where we have the bridge under construction, to be able to talk about that as well as other projects. We're pleased to be here today, and we're pleased to have as our guest Paul Deggs, who is Deputy Commissioner and Chief Engineer for the Tennessee Department of Transportation. Paul, welcome.
Thank you.
Commonly referred to as TDOT.
That's true.
And Dana Richardson, who is the Transportation Director for the City of Murfreesboro. Dana, welcome.
Thank you, John.
In talking to Dana and Paul, who are veteran workers in highway construction, we realize that Paul is at least a 27-year veteran of the department, and Dana a 29-year veteran in his particular specifics. Paul, I guess that one of the real big projects going on for us in this community is the bridge at Broad and Memorial.
That's right, John. You know, Broad and Memorial both carry about 30,000 vehicles a day. So you've got 60,000 vehicles every day going through that intersection. It's a big challenge. Most intersections have very high traffic on one road, and then the side road is much lower volumes. Mm-hmm. When you have two roads with such high traffic, it creates a lot of challenges. And so, you know, at times this has been one of the heaviest traveled intersections in the state. So we've come with a concept, working closely with Dana and the City of Murfreesboro, to put an interchange at this location, and we really think that it'll really significantly reduce delays in the morning and afternoon rush hours through here.
How does this work out with the city and the state working together? The city does part of the funding, is that right, Dana?
We do a variety of funding mixes depending on the project and the timing. This project has been around since the probably mid-90s in one form or another. In the early days, we agreed to contribute some of our federal funding sources to this if the state would help out and supplement the funding, and they are doing the majority of it through the state and federal resources for this project. But we did have some contribution in putting forth some of our allocations to the city into it.
What is the total amount of funding on that project?
Well, right now, you know, the construction phase is about $17.5 million just for the contractor alone.
Okay.
When you total everything up with right-of-way cost, our engineering, our inspection activities, we're probably pushing the high 20s, $27, $28 million for the total delivery of the project. Most of those dollars would be in the form of federal aid through the Highway Trust Fund with a 20% match, largely made by the state. But again, the City of Murfreesboro has worked with us. There are federal dollars available through them. And so it's kind of a marriage between federal, state, and local monies to help deliver this project.
Which is a wonderful work between all three levels of government then. What's the time span on this particular project?
Well, you know, the project, you know, it's a pretty complex project. You know, if there were no traffic out there, we could probably get in there in 8 or 10 months and build the whole thing. But to maintain traffic and make sure that people's electricity and water is not shut off during construction, we have to schedule things. So I believe it's about a 35 month construction phase on the job.
I recall May of 2016 was the completion. My memory serves me correct.
That's got to be a complicated project rather than one with just a brand new road.
It is. If you think about the critical path issues on the project, you have to get utilities relocated. You have to put your footings and everything for your bridges in place. You have to have traffic shifts so we can maintain at least enough laneage through there so the intersection still works during construction. So very, very complex project. You know, sometimes people will ask, well, why aren't you working over there? And well, if I work over there today, then one of these days I might have to put a lane on top of that. So It's all about staging. We do have a critical path analysis on the project that looks at which activities are the key activities that drive the timeline, and allow us to really compact the schedule down to get it done as fast as possible.
And I presume a lot of the work that's going on now is rerouting those utilities.
That's correct. That's correct. You know, the first thing we have to do on most of our projects, particularly projects in more urbanized areas, is we have to get in there and make sure all the utility relocation is taken care of. I know we work very closely with the city on the utility relocations. You know, you have to have a place to put all of these utilities, and that was something that was key that Dana helped us out on, is working with all the various utility owners to make sure that we had a place for everything to go.
One of the differences in this project that we don't see in all of the rest of them that people may or may not be aware of is the fact that all of the utilities within the project limits are going to be put underground.
Okay.
So now, where you see, drive down the road, and most people drive by it every day and probably just don't recognize it, but you have all the overhead utility lines with electric and phone and cable and everything else.
And all of that will be underground?
Underground. So if you can drive down through there and try to visualize that today being underground, I think you will find an extremely clean looking project and our goal was to fit that in with the motif of our downtown and so forth, so it'd tie in better.
How does this compare, Paul, with other projects the state has done? Is it as larger than, or?
Well, I mean, you know, large is a relative term. You know, we have 2 projects under construction in the state right now that are just over $100 million.
Yes.
So, you know, but Widening US 27 in Chattanooga, it's a big major construction project, and we have a major interchange in Memphis where I-40 and I-240 come together. Again, but very large, expansive projects. You know, urban projects, urban interchange projects like this are some of the most complex work. You know, if we're building, you know, a piece of State Route 840 that's through the countryside, for instance, not as many direct impacts on the public, you know, impacts a few property owners more. So this project is, you know, we do intersections all the time across the state, but this is really, from a traffic standpoint, one of the heaviest volume of a single intersection that we probably have under construction all over the state right now.
You mentioned State Route 840, that final addition connecting with 40 at Dixon is one of the most beautiful stretches of highway we have anywhere in the state, I believe.
Well, you know, we think it's a good road. You know, it's had a lot of support behind it. I know there was some controversy over it, but I know the people in Rutherford County, some of the most frequent phone calls that we got about the completion of that road came from folks in Rutherford County.
I'll bet. Well, I enjoyed riding my bicycle on it prior to it opening, and
well,
also being there for opening day. That's a great event. Dana, what other projects do you have coming up within the city of Murfreesboro other than the bridge?
Well, I mean, we have a lot of projects.
That the state will be involved in particularly.
The ones that we're probably involved in together right now, the biggest ones would be the widening of Thompson Lane. Again, this is a partnership with shared funding. We're bringing some federal funds to the table and matching them. The state has graciously agreed to provide some of their state and federal funding for, you know, the construction phases. So the widening of Thompson Lane from 2 lanes to 5 between Broad Street and Memorial Boulevard is underway. It's going to be a huge project. We're also working on a project right now, the Braidwell Park reconstruction. In that, that's going to be more of a multimodal facility. We're taking a 2-lane old state route ditch section road and turning it into a 3-lane road with bike lanes, curb and gutter, sidewalks, and that would be a section between Southeast Broad Street and Rutherford Boulevard, about 2.1 miles. So that's another project, and probably one of our bigger projects. We're doing Cherry Lane and building an interchange at State Route 840. That's over a $30 million project. So we've got several big ones. In fact, I think the combination of those that we contracted through TDOT at one fell swoop was about $70-something million worth of project. So there's a lot of continuation in the partnership between us and the funding of these roadways.
You know, in Rutherford County, we have a long history of a strong partnership between the city and the county. You know, when a state highway travels through a city, it's also a city street. So I think it's important for us at TDOT to recognize the desires of a community, livability issues, certainly when we come through and are widening a 2-lane road with ditches to 5 lanes, the desire for good pedestrian access, and really even bicycle access is a huge issue today. One of the things that we're seeing in communities across the state, and in particular here in Rutherford County and Murfreesboro, is a desire to have good access for not just cars, but for other modes of transportation as well.
Danny, you mentioned the additional interchange having to do with Cherry Lane. So we'll have another access point for interstate for Rutherford County and Murfreesboro.
Yeah, it's kind of a sister project to the widening of Thompson Lane.
I see.
You kind of look on a map, they're to some degree parallel, but we're trying to siphon off some of the traffic in the northern part of town to use that instead of coming into what is a little bit more of the inner city now, which is the intersection of Broad Street and Thompson Lane. So the 2 projects in companion would really help to provide some long-term traffic mitigation in the northern part of Murfreesboro.
What's the timetable on that project?
Right now we're in the preliminary engineering and hope to have a public hearing this fall on that, and so we're probably talking somewhere between 5 to 10 years by the time we get through with all the environmental documents and get those approved, go through the right-of-way acquisition process, and certainly then into construction. So it's a substantial project.
John, some people might think that a 10-year time frame seems like a really long time, but if you look nationally, the national average from when you start a project to when you're driving on it is really 13 to 15 years.
Is that right?
In Tennessee, we're typically at about a 12-year time frame for large projects, certainly a new interchange on State Route 840. That's a big job. And one of the things we found, if you go much faster than about 8 years on a big project, the public feels like they've been kind of run over a little bit. And the processes it takes to get through the environmental process, to make sure that through a transparent process that you've informed the public of what you're doing, the right-of-way acquisition, all of those things do take a little bit of time. And so, 10 years does sound like a long time, but it's really, it's not inappropriate, to take a good deliberate process and deliver projects that way.
Tell us about the Highway Trust Fund. What's the situation on that for additional funding?
Right. Well, I'll kind of start out from a Tennessee perspective. In Tennessee, we're one of 4 states in the country that have 0 debt in our transportation program.
And that is wonderful, I think.
So when you go buy a gallon of gas for your car, you're paying 21.4 cents per gallon. So if it's $2 a gallon or $5 a gallon, 21.4 cents. And so we use those dollars and we're pay-as-you-go. We don't pay any debt. There's no interest payments on what we do. So that has worked very well for Tennessee. It puts us in a very strong position. Yes. On the federal level, in 2005, when the federal transportation bill that funds the federal transportation program was passed, they projected revenues. And of course, it was a 5-year bill, so it was supposed to go, it ended in October 2009. And of course, we all know what happened in the late 2000s. So the revenue didn't keep up, and they transferred money from the general fund. So today, and even in the new bill that we have today, called MAP 21, we're spending about $42 billion annually in the U.S. on transportation on the highway side. But the gas tax you pay on the federal side is 18.4 cents. It's only generating $32 billion. So we are supporting the Highway Trust Fund with general fund transfers. And of course, so come September 30th of this year, our bill expires, and we all can kind of see what's going on the national level right now. So will there be a way to try to find funding at the $42 billion level? That's going to have to find additional revenue somewhere. Otherwise, we will drop back to just what the federal fuel tax generates, $32 billion. If that happens, there will be 0 federal dollars available for new work next year, because of the way the Highway Trust Fund works. it's not pay as you go. So we're paying this year, it takes about 4 years to build a project on average if you take all of them together. So this year we're paying for the last 3 years of projects on the federal side.
We're behind.
And so if we cut about a third or well, about a fourth of our funding out, in 2015 there'll be no new federal dollars for construction. It won't stop projects like Broad Memorial because it will continue to fund those, but new projects, new contracts will not happen. Yeah. And then starting in 2016, we'll see about a 30% cut in the program. So it's a big issue. We have contacted our congressional and Senate delegation in Washington and talked to them. There is a lot of discussion going on. You know, while we're concerned and we are prepared that if the funding drops, that TDOT will not have to go to the state general fund and ask for additional dollars.
That's good.
We can survive for a year, but most of the other states in the country, we don't believe are going to be able to do that. Some states are spending basically their entire federal aid program covering debt for projects that have been long built.
And which we have none of.
That's correct. So I think the leadership of our officials in the governor's office, the General Assembly, and through a strong Department of Transportation, it's put us in a very, very good financial situation.
And the gasoline tax you referred to hasn't been increased in a number of years, as I recall.
Right, the state gas tax hasn't been raised since 1989, and the federal gas tax has not been raised since 1993.
And in all this, we're still what's called a donor state, right, Paul?
Well, you know, but before the general fund transfers, every dollar we sent to Washington in fuel tax revenue, we would get about 92 cents back. Since there's general fund transfers now, technically all the states are getting more in transportation dollars back than they're sending up in gas tax revenue. So the whole donor state issue is really not a factor today because of the general fund transfers. I would say some states are getting more than others, and we're not one of those states.
I understand. Okay. Any big projects that are on the horizon that's going to be affected by this fund? Well, any project, I guess, will be.
Well, you know, there are a lot. You know, one of the things that we've had to look at is, well, what are the priority issues that we're faced with? And, you know, Governor Haslam and Commissioner Schroer have impressed on us at Transportation that, look, we've got to make sure we're doing things that support strong economic growth. So the first thing that we're looking at as we look at how do we deal with a dramatic cut in funding is we're looking at the projects that we all have on the books out there trying to get underway, and we're putting a prioritization on ones that support job creation in Tennessee. That's very important. It's not just an urban issue, it's urban and rural. You know, in urban areas, congestion has a huge impact on economic prosperity, and in rural areas, access is critical. So there's a balance that we have to do out there, but certainly, you know, of course, safety's number one. We want to deal with safety issues, but then economic development is one of the things we certainly want to put a priority on in supporting.
Going back to the funding, I meant to ask you about electric automobiles. Is this having a major effect yet on gasoline tax revenue?
Well, you know, the numbers are so small right now, but I mean, you know, I would observe that if you have an electric vehicle right now, other than your title and registration, you're not paying for the use of roads. So you're kind of getting a free ride driving down the highway.
And as we get more and more electric vehicles on the road, I guess they have more of an impact on our,
you know, and even beyond just electric vehicles, if you look at, I mean, you can buy vehicles right now that get, you know, 50 miles to the gallon. And, you know, I remember back in my first vehicle, that old Ford Torino I got was about 10 miles to the gallon, you know.
You had an efficient one.
So, you know, and I've got a pickup truck at the house that's, it probably doesn't get 10, 11 miles to the gallon.
Other projects that your department is involved with, rail in addition to roads?
Right.
What other modes of transportation?
Right, of course, we are a true Department of Transportation. We support all modes of transportation. Certainly, we talk about pedestrian and bike facilities being incorporated onto our roads. Transit rides on our roads. We support transit operations. I know Murfreesboro has a transit operation right now, and we do help support that as well. Certainly short line railroads we support. Do a little bit in waterways, but frankly not a whole lot. But we are in that area as well. One of the areas that a lot of Tennesseans might not realize that we support that is critical to job creation in Tennessee is our Aeronautics Program.
Yes.
There's 53 small airports across the state that, and they're not commercial airports, but for economic development standpoint, if you're an industry that is developing a factory or manufacturing type facility, they want to be able to get to their facilities, and this network of small airports that we have out there is critical in supporting job creation across the state. And frankly, we're one of the envies of many of the states in the country that don't have that type of aeronautics program.
We'd refer to those as general aviation
general aviation airports, and again, they are typically run by a community effort with a board put together in the community. I know y'all have an airport here in
Murfreesboro Municipal Airport, and then also in the county the old Smyrna Airport as well.
Correct. That's correct.
So it's a very important part of our economy here in this community. Dana, what do you envision on the horizon? We didn't ask you about the bridge on Joe Jackson Parkway.
Well, that's a joint project between not only the state of Tennessee and the city of Murfreesboro, but also Rutherford County. And it's about a $13 million project, give or take, from the engineering all the way through the actual construction. And the state of Tennessee was gracious enough to provide us about $2 million under the Local Interstate Connector Act program. And after that, the city and the county agreed to split equally the construction. So again, that's an important project to everyone, but at the same time, it makes it more financially manageable that everybody has a smaller piece of it rather than one entity having to shoulder the total financial portion of that.
Okay. And the timetable on that would be?
We look to have that completed this fall. Okay. And it's moving along good. A huge bridge. In fact, our city engineer tells us that's probably the longest bridge in Rutherford County. So it's about 1,300 foot of bridge, and pretty large project, but look forward to having that. He mentioned economic development. That's certainly one of our huge economic development corridors. The state's been, again, gracious in providing some funding through state industrial access funds and so forth, and doing road improvements along Joe B. Jackson for a lot of the industries that we've been fortunate enough to attract.
Paul, we mentioned earlier about your 27 years with the department. You started out in what job?
Well, my first job in the department was I worked as a summer seasonal student in college, and I was an inspector at a prestressed concrete plant, and made bridge beams and the noise wall panels on 440 up in Nashville. And so I kind of started pretty lowly. I actually worked for a contractor for a short time before I graduated college, and that was a good motivation to finish school. And but I've served in several areas in the department, and my background is bridges and hydraulics. Okay. But I've served in various modes in the department, and mainly on the highway side. But it's been a good career. I really enjoy the work.
And you're a graduate of Tennessee Tech.
Tennessee Tech. I did spend a semester at Middle Tennessee State, but I did. I grew up in southern Davidson County, just across the county line from Laverne there. So these are kind of my stomping grounds through here.
So over the years, how has the work changed as you see it from the department? What's different today from years ago?
Years ago, it was pave it black and don't look back. The big push was get out, build the road, move on to the next one. Okay. And largely we left the maintenance of that to our maintenance guys. And what's really happened, the big change is the taxpayer has paid for a lane of road. And so what we're trying to do is maximize the efficiency of it. If somebody breaks down in the middle of the road, cars aren't going, that's got 0% efficiency. So operations is the big issue. So we are going to this operation mindset. And frankly, we're one of the big leaders nationwide to try to push this, rather than spending the tens of millions of dollars to add another lane to a road, if we can make it more efficient, I can push off to the future the need to widen it. In fact, if I do it right, and we work with local government on how they look at land use, then we might never have to widen that road, and having a good, strong operational background to your network can allow you really to have a strong economy, a great livable community, and it allows all of us to live well.
You make me think of one project or projects you do in continual repaving, I guess, to keep the roads number one condition.
Right. Along with this operational view, we're taking asset management approach. I'm trying to get the longest possible life of a road for the least possible cost. And if you think about it, if I wait and let if I build a road new and I just walk away and let it deteriorate real bad, a pavement's about this thick.
Okay.
If I let it deteriorate, I'm going to have to get 6 or 8 inches down into it. But I can work in that top 1 or 2 inches and spend a relatively modest amount of money and keep that pavement going forever. We call that a perpetual pavement. So we want that pavement to last essentially forever. So sometimes people say, well, TDOT's out there paving that road, and I didn't really think it needed paving. The sweet spot I'm trying to get to, I want to pave that road just before it falls to pieces. Okay. And if I wait and it falls to pieces on me, then I have to go deeper.
Okay.
But of course, if I pave it too early, people say, are they really being good stewards of our dollars? One of our big customer service priorities is having a smooth road. Our customers, we do customer service surveys, and they tell us that maintaining your investment in transportation is the #1 priority. And we do the same thing with bridges as well, but our largest asset is our pavements, both concrete and asphalt pavements.
And you have some of that repaving going on right now with I-24, I believe.
Well, this time of year, it's springtime, and we had an awful wet winter, and some of the roads that I was trying to get to just before they came to pieces, I didn't quite make it, but we're getting close. We're getting close. So you'll see a lot of this work. Springtime is our paving season, and now through probably July, you'll see a lot of work, and then starting it'll probably drop a little bit, and then you'll see the September, October time frame for people to do their finish-up work.
You mentioned bridges. Overall, as far as the state is concerned, most of our bridges in good condition?
Well, every bridge that is open to traffic in the state of Tennessee is safe. We inspect every single bridge every 2 years, some of them more often than that, and if it's open to traffic, it's safe. There's a few that have posted. Today, on the state highway system, we have a little over 8,000 bridges. I have 282 of them that are viewed as having some condition issues that I need to have some repair work. But we have a good, strong program that's 3.42% of our bridges. In the next 24 months, I think I'll have that number down to about 2% of our system.
Paul Deggs, we thank you very much for taking time out of your very busy schedule. Deputy Commissioner and Chief Engineer for the Tennessee Department of Transportation. And if I would say on a personal basis, during my time in the legislature, one of the joys of working with you and with other members of the department.
Well,
I have great pride in all the state employees and the good work that all of you do for the state of Tennessee.
Thank you.
And Dana Richardson, appreciate you as Transportation Director of the City of Murfreesboro. Appreciate you being with us. And that's Murfreesboro Storytellers. Thank you very much for watching.